Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if issei was stalker and harem with Grayfia Koneko Part 2. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the DanzyDanz for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. Let's start this video. Aside from your nightmares, any other drawbacks? I get headaches if I use it too much. Sharp ones. Like my head's being squashed. Even then your eyesight is notably sharp. For a human, that is. How far can you see objects in detail? I don't know. Pretty far? That sign across the field. What does it say? Girls only? Impressive. Not really, I just remember what it says. She chuckled. Ah, Christiana Rosenkreutz. At least that was what the name tag on her white doctor's coat said. A hot topic for all the male students who would brainstorm for any excuse so they could visit the school's infirmary. She fit the hot school nurse trope down to a T. Beautiful face and figure? Check. A cool, easygoing, with a unique mix of maturity and yet tomboyish aura surrounding her? Check. Enticing fragrance? Check. A voice that was slightly deeper than most women yet effortlessly seductive without being breathy? Check. Great thighs and tights? Very much so. No boys ever stayed cool around their school nurse. Even when they tried to, she would break their composure anyway, taking in that sadistic delight in making younglings squirm simply for the heck of it. Yet for a reason beyond imagination, this particular one was blind to all her aforementioned qualities, instead being fixated at the fact that her name was Roygun Belphegor, and the pair of horns nestling beside her cherry blossom pink hair. One for each side, curving forward and pointing at the ceiling. You're an odd one, Roygun softly giggled, easily matching Akino's in respect of effortless sultriness, yet just as easily outmatching Ria's queen in terms of the maturity her voice carried. A dangerously bewitching contralto. Normally the boys would steal glances at my chest, not my horns. I mean, everyone got chest, issei replied blandly, raising a few eyebrows, but I don't see someone with horns every day. Koneko gloomily stared at her chest, proceeding to kick Kiba's shin because of his unintentionally irritating sympathetic look. The blonde knight winced and bit down the pain. Can I touch them? My, how bold, Roygun tittered, this time more deviously. Go on ahead if you dare. He dared and went for it, touching it very gently as though her horn would sear his fingers. It's rock hard. Akino giggled. You won't find any softer bits up there. Akino giggled a mite louder. Rias lowered her eyelids, preparing to roll her eyes within the next seconds. Yow, issei jerked his hand back, staring at his index finger to see if it was bleeding. It wasn't. Thank the heavens. Pointy tips too. Roygun shrugged. As will the ones below given the right condition and treatment, or how chilly it is. This time, issei and Akino laughed quietly. That one didn't go under his radar at least, Roygun mused to herself. Rias had tolerated this tomfoolery enough. Well? How is he? Any anomalies? Anything beyond what's to be expected? Anomalies? Roygun repeated, sighing as she relaxed against her office chair. An anomaly in more ways than one. This one. She put one leg above another and cusped her knee. First off, he's drained the demonic magic stored inside his evil pieces. Consumed it, rather. There's something inside me? Issei worriedly asked. Is it gonna come out? Like the Hulk? Turning into a big green monster would not be ideal for a teenager, he didn't think. No telling yet if that is the case, but you, or what you have stripped away all magical properties of an object before eating it. Right, issei said, totally not getting it. Can you dumb it down? How'd it happen? I mean, I can at least try, Roygun sighed. Magic and science actually correlate with one another. Demonic power, the energy that is stored inside the evil piece, doesn't just disappear or appear out of nowhere. It came from the Agria's crystal. Are you following me so far? Yes, sensei. Energies don't disappear. Magical or not. They only change states. So either you have consumed it, or you've unconsciously converted it into another. Where it goes is still in the air now. Sacred gears. They are often named as God's tools because it creates energies out of nothing. Nothing short of a miracle, so to speak. What you have, while it's yet to be confirmed, may work the other way around, by turning energy into nothing. Issei realized he didn't really understand all of that. Only bits of it. The words made sense, sure, he just couldn't grasp how his body did all of that. Sucks to be academically challenged. Should I start getting worried? So he instead asked. His gut was telling him he should be concerned. I can't say. It's my first time seeing a case like yours. Huh. That's relieving. Sarcasm. How adorable. I say things as is, Roygun shrugged weightlessly, glancing over to look at Rias. If you want to know more, then I'll need to run more in-depth tests to know what's happening with this anomalous human of yours. None of those tests can be done here. He's not a lab rat you're free to toy with, Rias warned with mild annoyance. Roygun lifted both her hands to show she meant no ill will by that. That depends on him. All eyes on him again. He might have to start getting used to all this unwanted attention. Well, I do want to know what's wrong with me, but I gotta know what you're gonna do to me first. Not saying I don't trust you, Sensei, but I don't want to be experimented on by a mad scientist. But I'm reasonably sane, Roygun said with a simpering smile, not helping her case. Only some harmless tests. A more thorough scan of your body, brain, inner organs, and other intricacies. There's nothing I'd do that would harm you physically. What about mentally? Nor mentally, the school nurse hummed teasingly. Issei squinted. Doesn't sound very convincing to me, Roygun smirked, leaning over to him as she whispered, I can do a lot of convincing later on. He didn't blink. Later on? Why not now? Her smirk grew into a grin. Oh, very bold. Quite audacious, isn't he? Issei furrowed his brow. He felt like he just missed something. Stop teasing him, Roygun, sighed Rias, growing frustrated by the moment. Hayato, I can't force you to do anything, but I do suggest you think this through first. While it isn't uncommon for a human to enter hell, most of them are either magicians or contractors. You are neither. Oh, you mean the lab is in hell? He gaped. I thought it'd be somewhere around. Like a hidden lair or something. That's what I proposed. I'd like that very much, but the budget's been a bit tight this year. I thought you could just build stuff with magic, and renew the structures on a daily basis? It's much cheaper and convenient to buy the materials on Earth. There are tons of them being wasted upon. Issei thought the reason he got paid so much despite having no prior experience was due to the fact the Devil's Society didn't value money. The more you know. What do you say, boy? Eager to see what hell looks like. Roygun smiled a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Don't worry. There are no monsters there. Only feral demons in the Badlands. That has never breached the defenses for centuries, Rias hurriedly added, giving Roygun a disapproving look. And they're less of a threat, more of a nuisance either way. That didn't seem to bother Issei, however. Instead, he seemed curious. What's the difference between demons and devils? Wait, shit, I didn't mean to be rude. I just don't know anything about anything. Well, they often have tails and horns, said Roygun, noticing the boy glancing at her horns again. Yes. Like mine. But longer. Serving as weapons rather than ornaments. The nobles think of them as unrefined ruffians. The commoners see them as an annoyance. Despite these demons have been around longer than the devils as a whole. Not much different to how some nations of your world treat the natives. That's so Issei nodded, ruminating what he had just learned. The other devils kept watch at him, interested at how he would react that yes, for a fact, devils are capable of prejudice. So if they've been around before you guys and you guys were born because of the first Lucifer, right? He said, recalling Ria's crash course a few days regarding her kin's history. Who made them? The Occult Research Club's room went quiet, until Kiba snorted a brief chuckle. See? He raises some good questions. Roygun's smile was much more sincere this time. You indeed raise a good question, since that's what I asked Ajuka. The hell's Ajuka? Issei wanted to ask, stopping because he didn't want to be rude and cut her off. It was Rias instead who cut her off. Did he say anything? He speculated it might be Trihexa. Might be another god. Not much we know about the time before it all began, and no demons have ever bothered to keep their history recorded, she continued. A fun fact, we name it demonic power because devilish power doesn't sound as intimidating. In truth, a demon's power has no similarities to what the devils have. Funny that, HM? That was an interesting fact, Issei decided. Not sure if it was funny. He knew it was all he understood from that explanation. Trihexa? The name rang a bell. Something he heard from math class probably. Who'd have thought math would be the reason for demons' existence? If only those demons were much more cooperative, that age-old question would already have an answer. Ah well, Roygun shrugged. I can teach you a lot more about our species if you are so interested in knowing. Much more fascinating than learning about your own that you've grown so accustomed to, no? Oh yeah. Definitely. Normal humans are probably boring to you. Well, you're not wrong. Sleep, eat, work, repeat. What kind of a society-imposed torture is that? Right. That's honestly my biggest fear, living in a cycle, being part of the rat race. Then there's marriages, kids, wife, retiring parents, taxes, mortgages, work until you're too old to do all the stuff you want to do when you were young. Like damn, that's it. You have heavy thoughts for a high schooler and a reasonable fear. I misjudged you. Ah, that's alright. He was used to being judged anyway. That's probably why I'm here too, aside from wanting to find out what the heck is up with my eyes, of course. Of course, the nurse hummed, folding her hands. He's a fascinating specimen, Rias, but that's all I can give you. I only took a little part in making the evil pieces. You'll either have to ask Ajuka directly or bring him to hell. In which case, just give me a ring. We'll consider it, Rias nodded. Thank you. Much obliged, the school nurse hummed, getting up as she dusted off her white coat. I'll be in the infirmary. See if I can continue my interrupted nap. I was having quite the pleasant dream as well. I appreciate your time and help, Roygun. But never my sarcasm, said the school nurse with a dejected tone. You'll soon learn to appreciate it. I doubt it, Rias sighed as she gave a quick glance at her second-in-command, who played coy and was looking all innocent. Era? Why are you looking at me with such an accusative stare, Bucho? Rias shook her head in mute reply. Oh, and by the way, Rias, hands crossed, skimmed over towards the leaving Roygun. Although she despised having her thoughts being intruded upon without prior agreement, the school nurse that held the moniker as Empress of the Round Table had enough reasons to skip the formalities. Keep an eye on him. Better yet, sever ties with him. I can't see anything but trouble if you keep him around. I'd be glad to take him in, however. Despite Roygun's soft giggles carrying her words away, Rias frowned. If she could invade Roygun's mind, then she chastised her for that warning. Sensible as it might be, no matter the reason, issei hadn't done anything to warrant that level of suspicion. His ocular powers and unsettling occurrences aside, he was a completely ordinary high schooler thrown into an unordinary world. If that wretched crow didn't approach him, then he wouldn't have to go through this. Break. You seem to have a lot in your mind. Or are you in a bad mood because your Saturday didn't go as you think it should have? It was no surprise to her that Akino would pick up her foul frame of mind. Apart from the obvious factor that was her ruined self-proclaimed holiday, Rias hadn't made any attempt to hide her growing vexation regarding the recent developments. Both, so she replied, sighing lengthily, almost as if she was deflating on her bed. Akino was sitting by the bedside, evidently in a much better mood. Ignorance is bliss, she supposed. Do share then, Akino offered. Are we bringing him to hell? It will be safer for him there. But you're concerned he might be taken away? Far from it, Rias scowled. I'm bothered about what Roygun said earlier. About him. She groaned, crossing her hands, releasing a sigh, wondering if she had made the right call thus far. Was I too hasty? She then asked. But if I didn't approach him, then the Fallens would have gotten to him first. Hasty or not, it's in the past either way. Can't do much about it, HM? Right, you're right. Another sigh. Should we take him? To hell, I mean? What do you think? If you're not bothered, other devils might snatch him away. I don't see why not. I don't want him to get too used to this side of the world. Not too late for him to step away and relive his life, isn't? I'm pretty sure he's hunted by those crows to simply step away, Rias. He can. Once we deal with them. Goading them to make reckless decisions won't be difficult, and no sane fallen angels are willing to plunge back into a war over a couple of dead. At most they'll ask for a little bit of territory, and there's no chance we'll cave in, but only if they make the first move. Seemed like her smarts and cunning had been catching up with her beauty shouldn't be too much of a surprise considering who, or what, her brother had become, Akino breathed. Though they have been awfully passive these last few weeks until Issei-kun came along. Going as far as trying to hurt him when one of ours is around. A risky move without the appropriate reward. I've been wondering about that too. Calawarner is a mindless brute, but I expected more from Rainer. She should have been able to reel in her dog. A careless mistake? A careless mistake that warrants a death sentence, Rias stated. Even a brainless muscle like Calawarner should at least be wary about the fragile nature of their status quo. A very thin ice she stepped upon, and she just threw a boulder by charging at Koneko. In broad daylight no less. I'm not worried about dealing with her. I'm more worried about what they know about him. Him? They're not interested in him. Just his powers. And I can't claim I was any different at the beginning, Rias openly admitted. Any chivalrous reasons I told him, whether it was for his safety or not, deep down I know I want him to be one of ours. That said, I don't understand why they'd want to kill him. They've killed for less, Akino pointed out, not at all concerned enough to put more thought into it. True, Rias conceded. That doesn't explain why they're so reckless desperate? Perhaps? Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe so. But I expected nothing less from you. That sarcasm shocked the gremry. Huh? What does that mean? Do I overthink often? Akino replied with a satisfied half-smile. Sometimes. Just sometimes. In a healthy dose. Not something you should worry about, it balances us out. In a flash, Rias recalled all of her servants' berserk buttons, and how easily they'd abandon all reason over a slight nudge. She promptly found solace that she carried no chains from the past that were dragging her steps. Only the fact that she wasn't able to help them as much as she had hoped. She had taken in Akino, Kiba and Koneko all in hopes she could provide them another shot at a better life. She got a friend and a capable queen instead, but was unable to do anything to help her, at the very least, make peace with her mother's untimely death. Bringing her to all sorts of places, giving her gifts among other junks had done nothing in helping the ostracized Himejima from moving from her past. She revived Yuto so that he could live on for those he lost, not seek vengeance. She managed, for the time being, but deep inside she knew the knight had gotten tired of talking about his past only to hear the same resolution. Please try and let them go. And what happened then? She was the one that got frustrated, and made him swear an oath instead. What a leader she was. Koneko, her brother, entrusted the petrified youngling to her, as he believed Rias would fare better than Koneko's real sister. He wasn't often wrong, but he couldn't be more mistaken. That bond she had with her sister wasn't something easily replaced or needing fixed. All she could do was ensure Koneko would be able to see her sister again, not a factor she could control. It didn't help that Kuroka was hunted. In spite of it all, her servants had given their all for her. They kept her safe. They never left. They all had tried, and succeeded, in becoming better. They even consoled her when the stress from her marriage arrangement was too much for her to bear. Now issei, another shot. A chance to see if she did learn from her past mistakes. Her primary intention of taking him in was to save him from the fallen angel's pursuit, not to fix him, or worse, inflict him with unwanted traumas. Break. Hey, Koneko-chan, I'm human again, am I? Not expecting this sudden deduction, especially when they were just idling by the lounge, Koneko could only widen her eyes before remembering the fact that she lied, and her expression morphed from surprise into shame. How did you find out? The sunlight didn't sting when we were walking back. I thought that was just me getting used to it, but then Roy-sensei said this human or something like that. I still wasn't sure, probably a misspeak from her. But now you just confirmed it. Koneko's frown shifted into a scowl. That was poor from her part as the group's resident poker face. Admittedly, her expression wasn't as rigid as most her peers had claimed to be, nor was she trying to look neutral at all times if not bored. She really was just bored. Why did you lie to me though? Her scowl reverted back into a guilty frown. I'm sorry. Huh? I wasn't baiting for you to apologize. I'm just curious. Her head perked up. Curious? Yeah. Why you lied, he said candidly. Why you think you should? Koneko faced the table beneath her, tongue-tied. I didn't want you to feel left out. You look distressed enough. Senpai. Did I? Well, I guess I did, he muttered, unsure of what he felt back then or if it bothered him that much. So you lied for my sake, huh? That's considerate of you, Koneko-chan. Thanks. Koneko gave a tiny nod. Emotionless on the outside, but was deeply relieved he didn't make a big deal out of her lie. That was quite the shock he gave her earlier. Issei wasn't known for his grades or flowery social life, and he did struggle trying to comprehend Roigun's exposition, but from what she had gathered, he seemed like an alright guy that understood social cues better than her. As his senior, she'd like to be someone he could depend upon. Senpai. Yeah? I want you to rely on me. Huh? Issei blinked. Huh? What? Is this a confession? A scarlet blush crept upon her face once Koneko realized the implication of her words. That's not what I meant. Koneko forgot her bluntness was a double-edged sword sometimes. I mean, if there's something troubling you, talk to me. Alright. Or Yuto-senpai, if it's easier, Koneko added, suddenly aware of their age gap and likely life experience. Koneko wasn't exactly a shrinking introvert, but she did in fact prefer to be alone most of the time. I know the president. She won't abandon you no matter what, senpai. Even if you lose trust in us for whatever reason, I believe Rias-senpai will still want the best for you. Alright. I'll lay my feelings out if I feel like crap. But I want it to be a two-way street, Koneko-chan, he replied, smiling somewhat boastfully. If you got something on your mind or just one event, I'm all ears. Okay, Koneko smiled. This felt nice. Talking to him felt nice. I'll keep that in mind. Pardon me. Returning from the kitchenette nearby, Kiba handed each of them a mug filled with steaming hot chocolate as he took a seat next to Koneko. This end of the lounge suddenly got twice as pleasant. Your evening beverages. Where's yours? I don't like chocolate. Too late to drink coffee now. Welp, the mouth-watering aroma evoked a strong sense of craving, and Issei wasted no time taking a careful sip, sighing in delight afterwards. It wasn't anything special, but hot chocolate was hot chocolate, and hot chocolates during nights were always a welcome pre-bed drink. Oh sweet baby Jesus, have mercy, he breathed, cupping the cup with his hands, enjoying the warmth. This chocolate rocks. Thanks, man. Don't mention it, Kiba smiled, disregarding the pang of headache. And don't mention that name either. Oh, my bad, Issei said sheepishly. And you guys really think of Prez highly, huh? I've only heard rumors about her. Everyone said she's perfect in everything. And what do you think of her after meeting her in person, Issei-kun? I know she's kind, that's for damn sure. I don't think I can remember the last time anyone was ever that kind to me. Must be a good leader too, and not the bossy kind, since I don't think you'd say what you said if she was. She's caring. Also has that motherly vibe to her, while Akino-senpai has more of a big sister vibe. I'm not the only one who thinks that way, right? No you're not, Kiba said with an amused laughter. Koneko backed Kiba's words with several nods. She was perfectly fine in letting him do the talking while she waited for her chocolate to cool down. A torture in and of itself, but a price she must pay due to her sensitive tongue. So, Roigun-sensei, hey, I got her name right. What's she like? Other than what you've seen for yourself, we don't know too much about her other than she used to be a noble. Used to? What happened? We don't know. Prez or Akino-san probably knows more. You might not be noticed, but she didn't talk to any of us during your checkup, Issei-kun. Just you, Prez, and Akino-san. Huh, but I don't think she's a bad person, Kiba went on. Most nobles don't pay much attention to other nobles' servants, after all. Sometimes out of contempt, but some do it out of respect towards the other noble. As for Miss Roigun, I'd assume she only bothers with what fascinates her at the moment. Out of respect? Issei repeated, not really seeing the correlation with ignoring people and respect. Yeah. Wouldn't want them to know you're secretly coveting their slaves. That's one way to put it. Kiba laughed sheepishly but didn't deny it, Issei observed. Politics, huh? Politics. The knight affirmed, sighing. Despite what it is, it's still an important skill to learn if you want to climb the ranks. Vital, even. I've seen nobles lose all their riches and heritage in a day because they disrespected a member of the council. But you should be fine where you are, Issei-kun. Kiba offered a charming smile. And if you ever want to learn, you can do that by watching Prez. Akino-san as well, to a degree. Got it, thanks for the heads up. What about you though? Well, I'm more of a backstage kind of person when it comes to that. I'm better in combat than diplomacy. Besides, I was born and trained to be an exorcist. Not exactly a former occupation worthy of praise when you're a devil, since I did hunt them for some while. The word hunt triggered his inner Chuyuni. Damn, man. That sounds badass. Ha. I'm glad you think so. So why do you stay a devil? Wait, let me rephrase that. What's the reason for you choosing to stay a devil? Other than, well, what happened to you then? Hang on. It's not like you can just stop being a devil. It's fine. I get what you're trying to ask. Koneko shifted uneasily, glancing a look at Kiba, worried if Issei had crossed the line. But Kiba appreciated Issei's apprehensiveness in asking the question, but also regarded him for his balls. Not many people dared to ask Kiba about his past, more so when only knowing him for just a few days. I didn't have much choice to begin with, the blonde knight started, surprising Koneko. His voice was lower than usual, hinting at the yet-to-be-lifted burden he carried. The options I had was either death or serve, and I was too angry to just accept death right then. I still have unfinished business, so I chose to serve her. As her knight. Dang, I know it's near impossible, but I want to repay her for what she's given to me. That's my reason. Literally owing her your life, huh? I hope you don't have to pay that in equal, Issei said genuinely, taking another sip of the now half-full chocolate. You don't have to answer this if you don't wanna, but how did you die? Kiba flashed a frown that soon turned to a scowl. I was too weak. Issei contemplated whether it was right of him to touch a sensitive matter like this. Kiba didn't pull the brakes, however, and went on. Too stupid. Too gullible. Kiba clenched his fists, glaring at the table. Found out too late that I was just a disposable tool. That we were just expendables. Yikes. Kiba raised his head, meeting Issei's eyes. I don't think you've heard about the Holy Sword Project. Issei shook his head. It was a project run by an organization under the Vatican with their full knowledge and approval, he seethed. They took in orphans from orphanages, no matter how young or old, as long as they're above 5, and taught them how to fight, gave them purpose, and that purpose is to be a holy sword wielder. Be a holy knight. Issei didn't say a word. He never expected Kiba would brood like this. All the girls in his school would lose their minds. I was 7 when they found me. We were just a bunch of confused children raised with fake love. I never questioned it even though I knew it was all just a farce. Too scared to lose what I had, he sighed as though he had lost to the turmoil in his head. Fake or not, it felt real. I thought if I worked harder than everyone else, they'd finally see I was worth it. Kiba sighed. But it didn't matter. When they figured none of us were compatible, that the holy sword didn't choose any of us, they got rid of me just like how they got rid of everyone else, except they left me to bleed to death. Then I met Rias. A harsh chuckle. Funny, isn't it? I was the least deserving of another chance, but I was the only survivor, as if God himself was mocking me. Ow. Haha, sorry Kaneko-chan. Kiba sheepishly laughed, patting the girl on her head several times, and Kaneko grabbed his hand with both of hers, forcing it to stay on her head. You have us now. Things are far better now, though. Kiba's smile had found its way home. Much more pleasant now, in fact. Not as forced. Like she said, I have them, and now you as well, Issei-kun. That's nice, dude. I'd still very much like to kill the ones responsible, however. Ahahaha. Now it was Issei that laughed sheepishly. Not very comfortable to hear the word kill being said with true intention instead of a joke. Happy for you, man. Seems like you've been through hell. Still am. Damn, dude, if your brooding gets any more impressive, I swear the girls will swoon when you walk past them. They'd have broody babies in your honor. Kiba laughed. It was the loudest and freest laughter he could remember. Issei felt honored and proud to have another person laugh at his jokes other than the usual suspects. Kaneko was equally shocked as she was surprised. I didn't know you could laugh like that. Me either, Kaneko-chan, the blondie huffed, still having some leftover laughter. Haha, I'm glad you asked, Issei-kun. Thanks. I didn't get to talk about this much. All I did was listen to you though. Maybe that's all you had to do, Issei smirked cheekily. Well, then any time, brother. The two boys bumped their fists, unfailing in making Kaneko feel left out. Slightly jealous as well. While we're still on topic, what about you, Kaneko-chan? You have a specific reason why you hang around Prez? She blinked a few times. I feel safest here. Safe? Are you hiding from something? Or just safe in general? It was a question said in jest, but Kaneko needed more time to answer that. Right now didn't seem to be the right time. Just in general. Issei didn't need to read minds to tell that was a lie. Alright. That's a good thing to have. Kaneko paused. Changing her mind wasn't something she did often, especially in such a short time after deciding on something. Am I hiding? No, you're Kaneko, Issei wanted to say, but knew that would ruin the mood. That would be unprofessional of him. I can't answer that. What's wrong, Kaneko-chan? Kiba offered. You look confused. Because I am, she admitted as she tipped her head to one side. I want to see her, but I also don't want to. Her? My sister. Nisama, Kaneko continued quietly. It's confusing. I shouldn't be afraid of her. I know she won't hurt me, but I am. I don't get it. Kiba could only sigh. With all the emotional traumas he carried, he didn't have the confidence to give out advice. Consoling words were all he could provide. You'll be fine, Kaneko-chan. Either way, we're around. You won't be alone when you do meet her again. I know, she muttered. But I don't know why I don't want to see her but still do at the same time. I miss her. That's heartbreaking. Issei got sad too, even if he didn't know the whole story. Why isn't she here? Did she go to a different group? Heir peerage? Well, Kiba was the one who spoke. What do you want me to do, Kaneko-chan? Is it alright to tell him? She nodded, too preoccupied with this newfound turmoil in her mind. Her sister is a wanted felon. The victim's family pressed charges on her as well as Kaneko-chan, but the Gremory House intervened, annulled Kaneko's sentence for a favor, and took her in. For me, I think they'll do the same if they find her sister. She just won't have as much leeway as Kaneko-chan's. Have you met her? Kiba shook his head. She's elusive. That much I can tell. Dangerous too. She won't be branded an SS rank criminal for nothing. To put in comparison, the highest ranking stray demons our group has handled are A rank, and for each increase in rank roughly means they're 10 times more dangerous. Meaning an SS rank criminal can be 100 times more dangerous than an A rank. Sounds dangerous. Issei swallowed. He imagined if he had a brother that had killed someone. How he'd react. He couldn't. Now he looked at Koneko, and didn't wonder how difficult this must be for her. Especially when it was pretty clear she still cared for her sister despite her crimes. And though he'd only known her for a while, Koneko didn't seem the type to just latch on to anybody. They were both orphaned as well. If he was Kaneko's brother, he'd do anything to protect her. Perhaps going as far as killing someone if it was what he must do in order to keep her safe. He imagined he'd have a different perspective regarding killing if he was raised in hell. He'd be a completely different person, no doubt. Maybe you're afraid she's changed? Issei added in his 2 cents. You've never seen her since then, right? Even before she did what she did? Koneko lifted her head, eyes widening. No. I didn't. Issei cocked his head, folding his arms. Maybe that's why. If she's never killed before, maybe you're shocked how she could do something like that when you're always with her. And now you're afraid she's no longer the Onisama you knew. That's true. Koneko frowned dejectedly. You're right. I get it now. I miss her because she's my sister. But I don't want to see her because I'm scared to find out if she's changed, and Nisama has always been more daring than me. Her shoulders slumped as her mood took a deep plunge due to the anxiety. What if the reason she never came back is because I was holding her back? Issei started panicking. Whoa, now how did you go to that conclusion? But it makes sense. Koneko cried. I couldn't take care of myself, so she did it for me. I was always the one who cried while Onisama with the way I acted. It must be as if I was the only one who lost my parents. She must have gotten sick of me. Come on, Koneko-chan, you don't know that. Maybe I'm not afraid if she's changed, maybe I'm just scared if she actually hates me because I made her change. Kiba finally spoke. Koneko-chan. I'm sorry, senpai, she sighed, sniffling, getting off her seat as she wiped her tears. Her head was pulsating and her heart was beating too fast. I think I'll sleep this off. Sorry for shouting at you. I'll apologize properly tomorrow. That's fine, Kiba sighed. You don't have to apologize. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Hope you'll feel better soon. Koneko nodded. Yes. And she left the lounge in silence, the sullen look refusing to leave her face as she made way to her bedroom. After a brief stare at the exit, then at each other's eyes, the two boys exhaled a long sigh. Crap, shouldn't have asked. You did more good than harm. I think she seems to have realized something from that. I never saw her like that. You think? The two went deathly quiet when they noticed Koneko had returned, still with a sullen look on her face as she approached their table, and picked up her mug. I forgot this, and left without further fanfare. Yeah. She'll be alright, Kiba reassured, before promptly smiling. You're a great listener, Issei-kun. I've had a hunch, but now you've really impressed me. You should consider being our therapist instead. A few laughs and jokes after, the conversation delved into light topics. Unsurprisingly, Issei was easy to talk to. Every topic he brought up, even those that the human knew completely none about, Issei would listen with genuine interest. He even asked how he took care of his sword and if he ever tried creating something other than a sword. Spear, axe, shields, other weapons. Like a gun. Can't say I have, but then it wouldn't have been called sword birth, would it? What would it be called then? Kiba considered for a moment. Weaponry birth. Wow, that's lame. A few moments later, the two decided to hit the sack. Tomorrow might be Sunday, but that wasn't a guaranteed holiday for the devils. To spite God's command about not working during Sabbath, some would claim. It wasn't until Issei reached his room that he remembered he was supposed to ask the devils what hell was like and to get their opinions on whether he should volunteer himself to be experimented upon. Not like his time wasn't well spent. There was always tomorrow. Break. The longer you delay this task, the higher chance there won't be another tomorrow. Once again cursing her fate for having to sit before Penemu. Once again getting chastised. Once again wishing Kokobile didn't go nuts over starting another war. Normally Rainier could only bite down her rage and listen. But today she had enough. What do you want me to do then? She griped. The devils are all coddling him in that school, and that Belphegor is nearby. The Gremry must have asked for better protection. Even with all my men, we'll die stupid. Why didn't you take care of him when he was outside? That was your chance. He had an escort stronger than me or my soldiers that were present. I didn't want to risk starting the goddamn war again, she persisted. And it was just luck we found him wandering about. We didn't even know he could go back to being human. Yes, expect the unexpected, but who could have expected that? And now when we're getting ready, that damned Belphegor showed up. I need more and better men. The 5 of us won't be enough. Penemu's stare was stern. Unflinching. Rainier struggled to maintain eye contact from the sheer pressure exuded from the fallen scribe, but she remained stubborn. If she wilted away, then this meeting wouldn't be any different to the last. Give me more men. An adequate one. Replace me if you have, but I'm not sending my soldiers to a suicide mission. He's human again, you say? Yeah. People rarely saw Penemu's smile. Rainier was probably the lucky few, though she doubted if this counted as a smile. More of a smug smirk if anything, just the slightest lift of one corner of her lips, coupled with the slight narrowing of her sharp, eagle-like crimson eyes. Rainier hated herself for feeling threatened. You should have started with that. Very well, I approve your request, Penemu chuckled as she rose from her seat, her formal clothing combusting into dark flames, revealing her dark purple skin-tight battle outfit. We're going in now? He's a human. There's a chance he can be reincarnated again. I don't intend to leave the fate of the world to chance. And the devils? We'll test if they are too proud to see reason and start a war over a boy. 6 months after she was relocated here, the pointed scent of basic Earth-manufactured health-related drugs and tonic no longer bothered her as much. Blending in with the humans didn't take her as long. They mostly left her alone after her first week in this academy. A few students would come and visit for her fashion advice, which she appreciated. Coal Town could be quite dull. The boy was something else though. Perhaps her counsel for Rias to stay away from the boy was a tad bit too much, maybe even unwarranted, considering Haida Issei's ordinariness and general amiable behavior. Too humane for her taste. But she wasn't the type to hand out advices without its own reasons. The Abrahamic god being dead for nearly 1,000 years was one. However capable Michael was as Yahweh's right hand, maintaining the sacred gear system even with the help of the seraphs was beyond the angel's capability. That was like tasking someone else other than Ajuka to maintain the evil pieces system. Nobody could regulate it as perfectly. Those systems were created without a manual for one, and, with God being God and Ajuka being Ajuka, flawed perfectionists on their own, had doubly made sure for the system to run stable even when they were gone, albeit defects and malfunctions were still to be expected, and 1,000 years was a terribly long time. Why, it nearly quadrupled her current life. The value of the sacred gear systems had no doubt depreciated, horribly so that glitches occurred at an almost stable rate now that the devils that were in the know were getting warrior with the sacred gear possessors and other devils. Peerages. Valid reason altogether, but why do I think all they want is to purify our blighted dynasty? Roygun watched as Satan with the slick swept back hair chuckled from the hologram emitted by her modified phone that she bought on Earth for a mere 2,999 yen including tax. All thanks to China and their low-wage laborers. That's none of my concern. We have Surzex to handle that sort of thing. You don't seem concerned. I don't concern myself with social issues. Never have to either. Like I said, that's Surzex's job. Ajuka Astaroth ever antisocial. Well, that would be a wrong label for him, as he simply had no interest talking about anything that didn't relate, or to anyone that didn't pique his interest in the slightest bit. Roygun was lucky she knew a couple of things or two about the evil pieces system, and its loopholes much to Ajuka's annoyance. Those got patched out in the end though. No more abusing the enigmatic king piece for her, but hey. At least she wasn't imprisoned for life or sentenced for a lifetime of community service. Plus she got to hang out with the top brass of the netherworld from time to time. Losing her peerage was unfortunate, but you lose some, you win some, she supposed. Roygun smirked as she returned the conversation back to the topic that started the call in the first place. Anything to say about the boy I just told you about? He's an odd case. Unless there's a new brand of sacred gear, made by a deity attempting to imitate the deceased god's work, what he has may not be a sacred gear based on your observation. Ajuka replied with a neutral look on his face. He wasn't very expressive. An absolute demon in poker even without his insane mind power. Now that was the reason why she called him. That so? How come? You said you didn't feel a thing when he activated his ocular powers. Nothing divine in the slightest? Nothing celestial or heavenly? None whatsoever. But isn't that the case for all sacred gears? Don't they make things out of nothing? That's the property of what's inside the sacred gears themselves, Ajuka explained. Think of sacred gears less of a tool and more of a container. A backpack containing the tools. That backpack is what God created, with hundreds of seals for the containment kind. A terribly effective prison. That backpack most definitely radiates God's divine power. Huh. You learn something new every day, Roygun commented. Is that why evil pieces work on those people now that he's been dead for a while? Correct. There was a time when the gear possessors weren't compatible with the evil pieces. Doubtlessly a defect caused by his absence. The seal is weakening. I'm impressed it took more than half a millennia since he died. Roygun noted how Ajuka looked irritated. She guessed it was due to the fact he couldn't decipher God's seal when he was alive. Not that he had the opportunity. He wasn't even conceived yet. Sounds good to me. What's the worst that can happen if it keeps getting weaker? Maybe we can finally extract whatever is inside in due time. This is only speculation, but the possessors may completely lose their ability. And for the containment kind, gears that entrap a soul, what do you think will occur should the seal depreciate too weak? Considering God made the ultimate sacrifice by sealing trihexa, that might not be so ideal. But those things should hold for a few future generations at least. Worse if there's no attempt to refurbish the system. It's getting painfully evident that heaven is struggling. Let's just hope they're not entirely incompetent. She twirled a smile. How much do you think they're willing to give for your service? Nothing they offer can sway me. Ajuka smiled with a thinly veiled pride. Aside from surrendering the system itself entirely for us to use and research. Yeah, well, can you say that if your best pal Zex got kidnapped, Satanapped? Fat chance though, Roygun mused, keeping the thought to herself. So, you said what he had isn't a gear. Potentially. Potentially, Roygun repeated. But even if I didn't feel anything, isn't it possible that his sacred gear has weakened enough that it doesn't emit any holy residues anymore? The boy did just consume 4 pawns. It might have cancelled each other out. Seals don't work like that. You either destroy it or reinforce it. What do the pieces do to them? The latter. Not destroy it? Of course not, Ajuka frowned. Initially I planned for evil pieces to replace the seal outright. But, you couldn't. I couldn't, the genius Satan ruefully admitted. He could be quite cute when he got competitive, Roygun observed. Can't break it if you can't decipher it. At least, I didn't manage it in time before the seals have gotten pathetically weak that anything I've achieved was achievable by anyone else with the right tools. Pointless if someone else other than you can do it, That's an adorable way of thinking. Humph, he grunted. More in annoyance than embarrassment. Reinforcing it was the better option. Seems to be the case, now that you said it could break, Roygun muttered as she folded her hands. Can't you add a self-destruct option so that when our revived devils can't be revived again by those angels? Better yet, anyone? A pragmatic idea. I'm not against it, but Surzex will prefer extracting what they have than wasting valuable resources. Can it be done? Can't without killing the possessor. As long as they are linked to the souls, so no progress since then. Very well then. I like my idea better, but Roygun dropped it there. In that case, shouldn't I have detected a sliver of diabolic powers from him? Assuming he absorbed the evil pieces, he couldn't have. That property is unique to us devils and the evil pieces. Right. She nodded, but supposing I detected a bit of it, what would that mean? Who knows? Your tests are too simple for anyone to form a strong hypothesis, Ajuka stated blandly, a clear sign he was losing interest and was looking for an out. She could pick up the clicking of a door opening as his hologram glanced to the side. Ah, yes. Leave it there, thanks. Another click. Roygun guessed it was one of his lab maids, a portmanteau of maids and aides, devils or demons that were not only capable enough to provide help to Ajuka but also knew a little about brewery and service. Ajuka was very proud for bringing that word to life. The lab coat-wearing maid brought him his caffeine-infused beverages. Roygun's guess was proven to be true as Ajuka took a sip from a cup. The high-definition hologram even picked up its pretty latte art. Not that Ajuka paid any attention to it. Not much of an aesthetic kind of guy, this Satan. Isn't it too early over there for that kind of drink? You don't dictate a Satan. Unfortunately, Roygun huffed. Perhaps once she became the great king by a miracle. One of the things Roygun learned about the presumably quiet Satan was that the man's a shameless caffeine addict. He could drink a gallon every day. Freshly made coffee was perhaps one of the few things in existence that could draw a smile out of him other than a scientific breakthrough or Surzex. Maybe the reason they were so close was because Surzex was the one who introduced him to coffee when he got back from Colombia. I'll leave you to it then. But before I go, any pointers about what I should do next with the boy? Is he dangerous, is all I'm asking. If he is, that might be an easy chance for me to get into Surzek's good graces. Ajuka chuckled. His mood had noticeably improved. You propose getting rid of him? You should be aware that doing so will bring you Ria's anger, and therefore her brother's? She shrugged. What they know can't hurt them. Don't risk it. That's my counsel if you're asking for one. Personally, I'd rather you don't. I'd like to see him when I have the opportunity and time. Whatever he has, it has potential to improve my projects. An expected response. She was only joking about it anyway. Killing a meek boy would be a disgrace to her title. She might be exiled and banned from raiding games, but for all she cared, she still held the moniker of Empress of Slaughter until told otherwise by the Satans. Farewell, Ajuka bade, don't call me unless it's important. She humphed as the hologram zipped shut. Roygun stepped off her desk and fell onto her office's couch. Yes, the school infirmary had an office that had enough room for a couch. Yes, it was one of the things that she requested directly from the gremmery. Yes, other teachers were jealous. No, she didn't care. To be honest, she didn't care about a great deal of things. Attribute of a Belphegor. No other clans could match the Belphegors in sleazing. They could sleaze better than a sloth. But once they did find something they did care about, a goal, aspiration, a set objective they so desired to achieve, so few they would not do, in order to get what they desired. She didn't care about the boy. Intrigued, sure, but she wouldn't lose head if something unfortunate happened to him. She didn't care about Ria's group. She didn't even care that much for the netherworld. Not even Surskes, Ajuka, or the rest of the Satans. Not even her peerage. All she cared about was getting back into the arena, that irreplaceable triumphant feeling as an entire stadium, all 100,000 people, exploded in cheers and lauds of her name. To be able to finally hear the public worshipping her house name instead of jeers. It felt pretty good, she had to admit. Nah, it was cathartic. After everything she had endured. But for now a second nap seemed to be in order. Funny. She felt a mild sting, like someone had flicked the nape of her neck. Never a good sign. Kind of a bad omen, actually. And yet, in spite of it all and her delayed nap, a corner of her lips curled into a smile. Break. The time was nigh for her demise. The restlessness emanating from her underlings were practically strangling her, each of them begging for their concern to be addressed, as they were only getting closer to their grave with each step taken. Marching to Ku Academy even in the night would be the last idea she had, as Rainier wasn't an idiot. Yet here she was, seemingly in a suicide mission. It might be a different story for Penemu, but she and her group were shamefully outclassed by Rias and her henchmen. Most they could do was stall them for a few minutes. Penemu didn't even seem to be concerned in the slightest about her safety, and as Ko Academy loomed in the horizon, Rainier foregone all reasons and enforced obedience to remain silent. Lady Penemu, you're putting my life and my soldiers' lives on the line here. At least tell us why you're so insistent on getting rid of him. That makes us break all protocols. Saving the world is reason enough. By killing a single guy. By neutralizing an apocalyptic threat, yes. Apocalyptic? Rainier made a face. She didn't need to look around to know her minions had the same look. How? Those eyes of his? I've been watching him, and he doesn't even use it to kill a fly, let alone disintegrate an entire world. Penemu stopped her flight to face Rainier. And that justifies resigning this world's safety on him? Rainier winced. Penemu was neither tall nor muscular, slender even, but those 12 jet black wings with hazy dark air behind her gave her quite the intimidating effect nonetheless. That, and her sharp crimson eyes, or purely the fact that she was Azazel's executioner during the eternal conflict, and was dreaded enough that no devil ever bothered taking her head on, and it seemed she wasn't accepting silence as an answer. Well, Rainier regretted not keeping her mouth shut. She despised being put on the spot like this, but considering her life might meet a premature end today? Fuck it. What else could she lose? At least let us know more than that. At least let us know we're not going to die for nothing. And saving the world? What a crock of shit. What has the world done to us? I didn't take this job to be a hero, goddammit, we didn't. Why do we even have to go along? We're nothing compared to you. Fuck, it kills me to admit this. But we're literally nothing compared to those devils. It was then time and space itself distorted around them. A pocket dimension with just enough space to encompass the two of them. That was unprofessional of you, Penemu started. With her low menacing tone, as usual. You don't talk to your supervisors like that in front of your underlings. Led by example, Rainier. Rainier refused to get lectured on the eve of her termination and stood her ground. Not like I could make this sort of thing if I wanted to. Asking should never be prohibited, Penemu simply stated as she crossed her arms. Well, yeah? It's the answering part that depends on you. You mentioned you didn't join the Grigori for this, the Watcher went on, then what for? Money. Food. A roof over my head that doesn't leak, Rainier bluntly put. The shock in her face was faint, but Rainier saw it. She couldn't believe her luck. Two superiors and both of them were disconnected to their underlings in a way. What else? Not a single one of us aspires to be great, we're just regular Joes. We're nobody special. Special or not, duty applies to everyone. Duty? Rainier's eyes sharpened. Our duty was to patrol the area. That was our job desk. Not this. This is necessary. It's unfair. It needs to be done. And who decides that? You. Since when did I serve a god? Why are you so against the idea of allowing our young to see tomorrow? Because I don't want to be a hero. The world owes me nothing, and I owe it nothing either. You don't owe it anything either. For once, Penemu didn't have a reply. That felt good, Rainier thought. For whatever it was worth. That stunned silence spoke for itself, and after a minute-long silence, she whispered. I see. Do you? Rainier mocked. Well, what's the big deal with him then? How are you so sure that by killing a boy you'll be a hero and not a murderer? I'm not concerned with either. Fine. Will you tell me why he has to die? Because of what's inside of him. His sacred gear? Rainier raised an eyebrow. An actual answer at last. Won't it just jump to another if he dies? Not if we destroy it. Rainier stopped. That was new. This new insight even temporarily halted her rage. You can destroy a sacred gear? Not me, but Governor Azazel's invention. Rainier assumed the details were on a need-to-know basis, so she stopped there. Then we don't have to kill him. No. But the process will. So we can't kill him then. We can. Sacred gears will stay for a month before looking for a new vessel. Oh. Must have been Lord Azazel's discovery. Couldn't be this brute's. All right. So now she knew part of it. How come she didn't feel any better? She was going to die either way. There's no way we won't be hunted by the devils assuming we survive. You're gonna make it. You're you. You survived the war. That Gremry is a Satan's little sister, as is the other one. Rainier sighed, resigned to her fate. At least let my underlings go. Donasik's married and he's got a daughter. A human wife that isn't working and a 1-year-old baby. Middle's a brat, but her parents entrusted her to me. Kala is engaged. PFT, believe it or not, she didn't stop there. We're only your diversion, right? I can do that by myself. No need to drag them into this. They don't need to deal with this shit. Penemy would argue nobody was ever asked to deal with anything, they simply do or don't. And you? Rainier shrugged. No one's going to miss me much. Break. Strange, they said life flashes before your eyes when you die. But at the moment when she was still alive and well, Rainier could only see the faces of her imbecile underlings crowding after her when she dismissed them. And what's up with Donasik? She thought he'd be beyond delighted to hear he was pardoned from taking part in her suicide mission. Calla Warner was her usual aloof self, but she looked pissed. Middle took the cake though. Don't drown. Already sinking. Has she prided herself for coming up with that retort? That was witty of her. For once outwitty ing the yellow brat. Rainier might be weak, but she's not stupid. Unlike Donasik, she knew what courage is and she knew the fine line between bravery and getting herself killed. Unlike Middlet, she knew how to forge a plan and make progress without anyone to show her how. Unlike Calla Warner, she didn't let pride cloud her judgment. That boy's power was dangerous. He himself wasn't. But the devils were strong. Freakish strong. 2 high-class and a bunch of middle-class devils were enough to wipe out her squad. They'd kill her without needing a concrete reason. Luckily for her, Rias Gremry was not beyond reason, and Satan's little sister was too prideful to just eliminate a nobody like her without justification. She'd doubt her, sure. Probably wouldn't trust a single word she was going to say to her, but the Gremry was not without any flaws she couldn't capitalize. Finally turning yourself in, Rainier? Rainier wanted to spit. Look at her acting all high and mighty. What a revolting sight. I just want to talk, she said, barely veiling her defiant tone that came out naturally. Fallen angels often found it difficult to suppress the desire to just lunge in and jam a light spear down the she-devil's throat when they were only 10 feet apart. But Rainier wasn't eager to sign her death wish just yet. Talk? Rias raised an eyebrow. Earlier she had Kiba to escort Rainier here, to the open track field. The closest field to the old school building. It gave her barely enough time to think about the fallen angel's motive, but she assumed it was something related to the boy. Do you trust us so much that you come here alone, thinking you can get out of here unscathed? I don't, Rainier stated, shoving her hands into her coat. It was a cold night, and she didn't feel like being an exhibitionist in front of these devils. In fact, her usual get-up would just agitate them. She didn't need that. Especially not when she was surrounded. The midget was missing, however. Likely watching the boy to make sure he didn't do anything stupid. Fair enough, Rias nodded. If you're only here to talk, then I'll humor you. But first, I want to know if you're here for him. Yeah. That's right. Rias narrowed her green-shaded eyes. And you think you can convince me to hand him over to you just so you can kill him? I got my orders, she shrugged. Not my place to question my superiors. And you'd do anything you're told, even if it kills you. That shocks you? She scoffed. Not everyone gets to be born into a well-off family. Because that gives you the right to kill someone who doesn't understand what he has, Ria stated, refusing to let Rainier dictate the flow of the conversation. Much younger boys like him die by the thousands every day, but I don't hear you complaining about a single one of them. What's another one? Those lives are beyond my reach, his isn't. I promised him I'll protect him. I don't make false promises. Because of his eye power, is it? Well, I don't really care, Rainier scoffed. But isn't it convenient how you get to hog all the widows with unusual powers compared to, let's not look far for an example, what that Citri has? Rias lowered her tone and chin. What are you insinuating? Rainier didn't heed the warning on Ria's tone. You said those lives are beyond your reach, but let's be real here, you don't care about them or saving anyone. You just want people with powers. Not like there's anything wrong with it. I wouldn't judge if you said it as it is instead of that awful excuse. Rias didn't react strongly. Just an annoyed look. I admire your courage to come here all alone and finally have a civil discussion for once. But if you're here only to argue with me over this irrelevant matter, then I advise you to leave now. I'm not in the mood for mindless conversation. Damn it, Rainier cursed. She pushed her luck too much. By agitating Rias, she expected the redhead to defend herself and prolong this bullshit conversation, while Penemu kidnapped the boy, not turn around and leave. She was wiser than she gave her credit. Come on, think. Just as she was opening her mouth, the dirt track exploded into dust as Penemu had crash-landed, followed by a silver glaive that embedded itself just inches beside her cheek. Roygun followed suit, landing at the spot where the fallen angel cadre had crashed, now nothing but a messy crater as Penemu had vanished from the spot, appearing a distance away from her attacker. All that happened in a span of a split second that Rainier couldn't even process a single thing. But one thing she knew was that Penemu got discovered, meaning the plan didn't work, and this would be the most ideal time to get the hell away from this place as far as possible. I thought I smelled a rat. Roygun effortlessly yanked her polearm and swiftly spun it behind her, the golden sheen of its long handle shimmering under the moonlight. It was a crow instead. A rat with wings. Belphegor. Penemu grunted, annoyed, albeit she had the same look she always had that made it difficult to judge whether she was pissed or just neutral. Thunder boomed and crashed from the skies right into her hands, materializing into a crimson spear. There is no point talking to you, is there? Roygun twirled a simple smile. You know me quite well, for a soon-to-be wingless angel. Her smile shifted into an eager toothless grin, unfailingly expressing her desire to split this fallen angel in two. Break. Hell was that? Was Issei's immediate reaction upon hearing a tiny explosion from the outside. The shockwave shook the building. It was like a meteor had struck. He bolted out his room and to the window, and saw the billowing dirt dust from the track field, obscuring his sight. Senpai, Koneko-chan. He didn't know why he shouted as the snow-haired devil ran up to him. She was in her school uniform, for some reason. Maybe she slept in it so she didn't have to change in the morning. That didn't matter. Look! I think a meteor just struck. Crazy night, huh? Koneko peered out the window, and she wrinkled her nose as her hackles raised. Fallen angels, what do you mean? They crash-landed? Like stars? No! Fallen angels, they're here. We need to hide you, senpai. And me? Dread started to crawl into his mind. The thought of his new friends getting hurt was not a pleasant one to house. Yet first and foremost, the confusion that had returned. Then the skies flashed as thunder destroyed the silence, shocking him sober. Hide? But why should I? Gay. Too urgent to make guesses, Koneko yanked his arm and with that his entire body as she rushed deeper into the school, descending the stairs and running towards the darker parts, one that anyone rarely ever stepped a foot upon, into the general storage room, or what would appear as a simple storage room for outsiders, as a strong illusion spell conjured by a Satan was placed here. It wouldn't hold back someone as powerful, but it should delay them until help arrived. From the beginning, Rias had briefed everyone her contingency plan should the worst was to come, such as a sudden attack by the Grigori or worse, but Koneko never really thought it would happen. Nonetheless, her part in such an event was to hide in the basement, and wait for her more seasoned seniors to deal with the storm. She wouldn't have followed her orders, but Issei was with her, and protecting him was her top priority, as his senior. The panic room was an exact copy of their club room upstairs and was just as cool. It connected to a separate bedroom filled with 8 beds and a shower room, a storage for a couple months' worth of food, and a drawn pentagram with the Gremry crest at one of the corners. It lacked windows since there wasn't much scenery to look at 10 feet underground. Wait, did we just looped? Am I dreaming? This is getting crazier and crazier. Sorry, senpai, I was told to bring you here when things are getting ugly. That's fine and well appreciated, Kaneko-chan, Issei muttered, still bewildered as he scratched his wrist. Kaneko gripped him a bit too tight earlier. Scary how much power those small hands packed. So where are we? In some kind of a basement? Yes, Kaneko whispered for some reason, shutting the door behind them. This place looks exactly like the clubroom. Ryo-senpai designed it this way, I don't know why. Psychological thing, I guess. Issei scratched his cheek, head a complete mess. Insane how things had just escalated that fast. It went from 0 to a 100 faster than a heartbeat. He felt like he was in a movie or some sort of a wacky world. But no, this was stranger than anything he could imagine. Does this kind of thing happen often? He asked, somewhat nervously. No. Never has, Kaneko replied, still staring at the door, visibly agitated from whatever was occurring out there. Oh, those fallen angels were here for him. Her reply made it obvious to him. Man, he felt awful. He felt like his presence here had been doing nothing but cause trouble for the devils. He had to sit down, so he did. He took a seat at one of the sofas and slouched back. 1,000-yard stare towards the wooden coffee table, keeping silent despite his mind screaming. Should anyone get hurt from this, then that would be on him. They tell him it wasn't his fault, but it wouldn't help convince him in the slightest. Still, Issei didn't want to just sit and mope about it, but had no clue about what else he could do other than sit down and wait. Get up there? First off, he had never seen Kaneko make that face. She handled that one fallen angel like it was nothing. That scared look alone revealed to him the severity of the situation. Heading up there would only cause more trouble and likely get himself whacked, and he preferred being alive than being dead. But at the same time, the devils were risking getting hurt just to protect him. Maybe his eye power could help. Well, that shouldn't even be a question. It definitely would. The real question was whether or not he could use it when it came down to it. Are we really gonna stay here? He finally decided, stealing his resolve as he got off his ass. Yes, we should stay, senpai. You have to. You can't leave. Right. He forgot Kaneko dragged him all the way here with the intention of keeping him here. Just strutting out that door to play hero was out of the question. Still, he had to give it a shot. But Kaneko-chan, what if they're in trouble? Shouldn't we? No, that rooted him on the spot. Didn't expect that strong of a reaction from her. Especially her out of all people. It sobered him up, however, and made him realize that Kaneko hadn't moved from her place, and she was shivering as if she'd gotten a cold. And no, don't go. You can't. He thought she was mad at him at first, but no angry girl would make a face so terrified like this. Something wasn't right. Kaneko-chan? Are you okay? Her breathing quickened, each breath becoming shorter and shorter. Her eyes were wide open, yet staring at nothing. She was rapidly losing control of herself, Issei realized, and he just as quickly knelt himself down to level his face with hers, placed both his hands on her shoulders swiftly but gently, squeezed her lightly as he spoke to her the same way his father had. It'll be alright, Kaneko-chan. Look at me. You're gonna be fine. We'll be fine. You're keeping me safe too, right? You're like the strongest girl I know. All of this will be over in a flash, and then you'll be back eating cakes and sushis and ice creams, in no particular order. I'll even treat you to an all-you-can-eat cake buffet, after I get my first paycheck. Kaneko was completely stiff, shuddering, but rooted to the place, with a frightened expression someone her age shouldn't have to make. This sucked. Not because he didn't want to deal with this sort of situation, but who'd want to see their friend get a panic attack? A lot of her past could be revealed from this one event, and Issei had the soft skills required to understand she'd gone through a traumatic event in the past that was similar, like this, likely something that had a relation to her sister. Kaneko stared at his eyes, felt the gentleness within and the warm worry he had for her, and realized she was doing poorly at being his senior. Thanks for hanging in there, Issei said. Thanks had a more positive vibe than saying sorry for being so helpless. Patting her head, gently caressing her white hair, he managed to ease her down for a little. Enough that she let her tears run freely as her strength was seemingly sapped away as she crumbled into his shoulder, hugging him tightly. This was new to him. Issei didn't have any nephews or cousins that were younger than him, but maybe because he saw Kaneko more as a younger sister than a girl who was only 2 years apart that he didn't have trouble in holding her back. If she was Rias or Aquino, then he might be at a loss on how to act around them after this. There, I won't leave you, he whispered, trying to keep himself focused on this trouble rather than what might be brewing out there. At least until he felt a strange, oddly ticklish sensation between his fingers, until he glanced up to see a pair of white triangular ears sprouting from Kaneko's head, one folded under his hand. Profoundly confused at this sudden development, Issei pretended to not notice her cat ears or the lean tail poking out from her skirt. His mind was filled with question marks popping one after another, and Issei attempted to cope with it by imagining Motohama's excitement if he could tell him that cat girls existed. Before her were two catastrophically powerful entities about to duke it out, the entire Ko Academy their playing field, and in that sliver moment of time, during the briefest calm before the incoming hurricane, Rias made a split-second decision. Kiba, restrain Rainier. Kiba blitzed behind Rainier, bashing the back of her head with the handle of his sword. Fucking! It didn't knock her out, but it dizzied her. Angered her too. This amount of force was uncalled for. We're leaving, yeah? Not with her you're not. But a flock of raven-winged fallen angels descended to cut them off their path. 3 of them in total, each face Rias was all too familiar with. Rias seethed and cursed her luck as Akino took a stance beside her. Kiba was behind her, keeping Rainier in a hold. She didn't sense their sickening tainted divine presence due to the chaos that was about to unfold. Middled? Rainier shouted in surprise. That surprise coagulated into wrath. You moronic midget, what are you doing here? Rainier, you lying bitch, you told us you'd come back. Middled yelled back, looking equally as angered and betrayed as Calawarner and Donasek. Thinking of sacrificing yourself? Don't you pull that trash cliché on us. Are you telling us we're too useless for you? Calawarner spat, her piercing golden eyes glowing ominously as unholy rage emanated from her, coursing into her golden light spear. That we wouldn't be able to make a difference. I still think this is a terrible idea, Donasek followed, but his actions went against his words. The cowardly man brandished his weapon of light, ready to fight, unshaken now that he, like the rest of his compatriots, had accepted their demise. All to help their worthless leader that had gone with them through hell and back. You brain-dead idiots! Rainier cursed as rage pulsated throughout her body. Not only did they squander their ticket that she had to beg Penemu to get, they had to come back and ruin things for themselves. How long do you expect me to clean up after your mess all the time? Even when I die, I can't even die on my own terms? It was desire that made them fall. To plunge from heaven with no hope of returning. Blessed with freedom from God's order yet cursed with mortality, and sealed divine power. But it was also desires that could make them soar high, or plunge deeper down the pit. For fallen angels that finally developed a desire deep enough to overcome their fear of death, to face death's door without flinching or even flip the finger at God, to take a leap of faith, was a turning point for them, because not even a curse by the Heavenly Father would make them bend. And more often than not, those fallen angels grew a pair or more set of wings, and a sharp spike of their corrupted divine power during their awakening, and sanity overwhelmed by a sudden thirst for bloodshed and violence, an output for their increased power and wrath against God. As black mass of energy seemed bound to explode from them, Kiba swiftly moved away from Rainier, conjured his holy absorbing sword, and dashed towards Rias to protect his master as he assessed the situation. 4 wing sticks on Rainier's 4 frenzied crows. We've gotta go, Rias Aquino muttered. Her barrier completely encased them, but it was merely a temporary solution as they still needed to move away from this spot. Do we fight them? Rias couldn't risk them getting in the crossfire of Roygun and Penemu's battle. We'll have to go through them. The bunker's protection will keep them at bay. You devils, Rainier griped, the air around her darkening as her violet light spear crackled violently. We're in this mess because you had to take in that boy will bury you so completely. There'll be nothing left of you to remember. Still gimping yourself with those dead weights? Fuck off with your philosophical bullshit. We both know the only thing they're good at is slowing you down. Did I ask? You could be so much more, Rainier. They're holding you back. Try and deny it. You know it's true. They're either cowards or too stupid to read that there's a thick line between idiocy and bravery. They never sign up to be a damn hero. I didn't either. Everyone's a hero in their own story. Some are just more driven. Like me. You should be one too. We went through basics in the same camp. I captained a group of witless pricks that dreamt nothing more of getting fucked and getting paid, and so are you, but I don't let sentiments or attachments get in my way, and here I am, commanding a family of my own. I make 3 times your monthly pay in an hour. Ugh, are you done? Brag to someone else that gives a shit. I prioritize my ambition, not that of a fucking collective of faceless mooks. You'll never get anywhere with that kind of mindset, Rainier. Why settle for mediocrity when you can be so much more? If you come all the way here just to gloat or lecture me, then give me a reason not to gut you right this moment. You have potential, goddammit. I want to see you succeed. Working with your friends is a nice thing to have, yes. For the moment. But consider your future. 3 years you have been a captain without any promotion, and it's definitely not due to your work ethics or your performance. TCH. Are you finished? Get off my case. Saturnal's blood runs through you. A lot of us would kill to win a lottery like that. I'm just mad you're wasting it. As much as you're wasting your breath, whatever. Kokabil's gone. Likely never return. Penemu is strict and her head is harder than diamond, but she knows talent when they show it. If there's ever a time, then this is your moment. Don't waste it. You're more than some faceless grunt. The sky continued to darken as the fallen angels clashed with the devils, introducing another dimension to the fight as they had taken it to the skies. Make them pay, was the only thing echoing inside her head. They will pay for the humiliation she suffered. For all the failures and shortcomings that had befallen her group. For fucking up her last week. Rias and her cronies had all been laughing at her, underestimating her as another measly nobody. She had to make do with musty ransacked church as her base while this privileged brat had it all without even having to try. She had it all so easy, everything served to her on a silver platter, garnished with gold and silver. And still the Gremory bastard just had to make things worse by picking that other bastard like some stray pup. Nothing on this earth Rainier despised more. Gremory. Her eyes glowed like two hellish embers and her lips twisted in fury. Rainier's 6 dark wings beat furiously as she advanced, leaving a powerful whirling wind in her wake. Rias stretched out her hand to conjure a barrier as Rainier's violet light spear crashed against it, sending sparks and crackles before shattering the barrier and forcing Rias to back away. The fallen angel's rampage did not stop there. It had only just begun. In quick succession, Rainier wildly swung both her hands, leaving little to no gap that Rias could exploit as she had to defend herself unless she wanted to get hit by a pulsating light spear. A high-class devil she might be, underestimating the fervor of a recently awakened fallen angel might spell her doom. Her servants didn't have an easier time dealing with Rainier's frenzied lackeys either. Kiba had to endlessly dash away or keep his sword clash against Calawarner's short. Otherwise he'd risk getting attacked on multiple sides as Middlet was on the prowl, hurling light spears in between Calawarner's strikes to cover her attacks' intervals from being exploited by the nimble knight. Will you stop moving? Once again, he parried Calawarner's brute strike away, and was about to slice her neck off before another light spear was thrown at his head. He halted his assault to dodge, and felt a jolt of pain at his neck instead as Middlet's magenta light spear had nicked his skin. TCH, things weren't looking great, the knight thought and knew. They were outnumbered. And though they weren't outmatched, fallen angels tend to have better endurance compared to most devils. Their work tended to be more physically demanding whilst the devils tended to take action only when necessary, e.g. stray devils. And in the fallen's current fevered state, a battle of attrition would only end with their loss. What's wrong, Mr. Popular? Not used to the attention you're getting? If Middle was trying to rile him up, then it wasn't working. Either way, he had to figure something out quickly, and soon. At the skies a fair distance away from him, Aquino watched her thunder hit Donasek square in his chest, only to grit her teeth as he seemingly shrugged it off, flying towards her at an impossible breakneck speed, brandishing his light-imbued weapon with a face seething with rage. Barakil's brat. That name alone piqued her fury at this up-jumped mook. Say that name again and it'll be the last thing you'll ever say. Another blast. Donasek parried it away like slinging a flashier baseball, using his light sword as if it was a bat instead as he continued his charge. Ungrateful wretches like you don't deserve a father like him. All his time and effort, and when have you ever spent a second trying to understand? Shut up! The lightning bolt zapped the fallen angel on his face, but its strength was only enough in stripping Donasek of his hat. Barakil and Shuri, they've given everything for you to throw it all away. Some daughter you are, ha ha ha! Shut up, shut up! Why was this bastard yelling at her about all this? What did her family have anything to do with this? You know nothing. Even you're disgusted with yourself. I feel it. Your stubborn pride is the only thing keeping you together. Donasek cackled, laughing as if he'd lost his mind as Aquino barraged him with thunder and fire. Gahahaha. Try as you might. This is nothing compared to what you've put your own father through. Shut up. Donasek grinned viciously, victoriously. This gleeful satisfaction was not one easily mimicked. A cathartic sense of satisfaction. No words could describe how it felt to finally be able to go toe-to-toe with this certain traitorous wench. It felt amazing to finally be able to use these words to hurt her and have the power to defend himself against her onslaught, and pay her back for the humiliation he'd endured with one pulverizing punch to her stomach. Her eyes widened, her pupils contracted as pain racked her body. A cough of blood was torn out of her throat as wind surged against her. She saw the moon getting distant for a fraction of a second before the ground welcomed her body with a brutal slap. Ghak, Aquino-san! Kiba yelled out, but was unable to help as he had to defend himself against two well-coordinated fallen angels. Pesky things. He wouldn't mind getting crowded by his apparent fangirls than these crows. Tsk. Damn you, Kiba! Can you get to Akino? Rias shouted from the skies, having missed Rainier yet again. Despite power of destruction's potency, it meant nothing if she couldn't land a hit. Not currently, no! He screamed and grunted as he blocked Calawarner's heavy wallop. The raging fallen angel hadn't said a word, but her vicious glare told enough of her intent to maim and kill the blonde devil. Just as he was recovering his footing and preparing for Middle's follow-up attack, Kiba noted an incoming blue light spear from the corner of his eyes, and quickly stomped his foot as myriads of blades jutted out from the ground, forming a barrier of swords, shaking as Donasik's thrown light spear crashed against it. One down. Middle sneered. You're next, handsome, and I'll make it quick. Calawarner roared as she brought down her light sword, missing the knight by inches as he bounded out of the way. She knew that if there was a chance to repay this blonde bastard for every defeat and consequential humiliation she'd endured, this was it. Worm, quit squirming so I can kill you! Kiba groaned as he blocked her sideswipe, skidding as he felt his arms shake. He never had to fight an awakened crow, let alone two at once. He knew that their strength would multiply, but he never expected they'd be this freakishly strong. I hate to admit it, but I don't know how long I can keep them at bay, Prez. The knight seethed, ripping out a black-bladed sword out of the ground as now he had to dodge or swat away multiple light-infused javelins at once. Any ideas? Ugh, Roygun? Ria's eyes darted at where she'd last seen Roygun duking it out against Grigori's finest, but failed to find them. She might have led Penemia elsewhere. We're ending this tonight, Gremory. Rainier griped as she sent 5 light spears flying at the red-haired devil, only to watch them all dissipate as Ria's power of destruction engulfed them all mid-flight. Fine for her. They were distractions anyway as Rainier closed their distance. Me or you really know how to get on my nerves. With vexation, Rias unleashed a blast of black energy as a pulse of intense destructive power burst out of her hands, black and crimson in color as it tore the night air asunder, and missed. Rainier simply beat her wings once, lifting her just enough that the deadly beam traveled beneath her. That was pathetic, Gremory. Why don't you call your brother to show you how it should be done? Typically, in fiction, this was the point where she'd become serious and empowered by fury and blast Rainier away like nothing. But no such thing happened. Rias had been serious since the start, and never held back. Her power of destruction needed a while to be cast, and Rainier was keenly aware of that fact, and had been exploiting it to no end. She was not a fighter, and it showed. Her uniform had cuts, shredded in many parts. Red lines marred her pristine skin, and she felt her cheek bleeding as blood dribbled down to her chin. Akino was down. Kiba struggling against 3 fallen angels. Koneko had to keep issei safe. Roygun was nowhere to be found, and her own power, albeit lethal, was too slow to hit a nimble target. But it would need more than that to make Rias Gremory give up. Rias narrowed her eyes as Rainier whittled a strip of her uniform. Tsk, letting you roam free was a mistake. I should have killed you when I had the chance and reason. You should. But you didn't, did you? And why? Rainier glared back as Rias' blood sizzled on her light spear. Because you looked down on me. You condescending bitch thought your powers would answer for everything. Connections, heritage, peerage, everything given to you on a silver platter because you're Rias fucking Gremory. Her violet light spear darkened, its color draining, turning black as ink. Black flames seemingly flared over Rainier's 6 feathered wings, amalgamating into, well, news flash, Gremory, if you weren't born a Gremory, you'd be nothing, which is what you will be in a few moments. A loud cackle echoed from her throat as a storm of black flames whipped around her body. They twisted, spinning in a whirlwind that illuminated her face in a swirling mix of violet and black fire, marking the awakening of her dormant, inherited strength. Rias paled and staggered back as before her was a myriad of black light spears, dozens of them floating behind Rainier, pointing right at her. As they surged, intent on impaling her, Rias erupted a wall of her power of destruction, and braced herself for the worst. Break. Issei was 100% certain things were heating up on the surface, and he was dying to find out, and perhaps die afterwards since he'd be way in over his head, but for this moment, Koneko was in his hands, and the face she was making reminded him too much of a person with nasty fever. Even her body felt warmer, now that he thought about it. One thing he knew for sure was that he couldn't leave her alone. Do you feel better, Koneko-chan? You don't, you're a bit warmer, and I don't know if you've noticed, but you're a lot more her twin. Big white cat ears tickled his chin and neck as he shuddered in response. Cat ear. This is how I'm supposed to be, Koneko replied in her usual soft murmur of a voice. What I really am. Who you really are? Issei muttered obliviously to himself, thinking that repeating that sentence would bring light to this dramatism. It didn't. Huh! She peeled herself away from his hug, glancing down with a downcast expression as she continued, I'm a nekashu. A hellcat. A subspecies of a Nikomata, only that we are more attuned to essences of life. A sort of energy that's inside all of us. Oh, sorta like chakra? From Naruto? I don't know what Naruto is, but I guess so. Okay. That's a shocker. I prefer to listen rather than watching, she muttered. My species is able to turn it into something we can use. A bit like magic. Issei wasn't expecting a crash course about whatever this was, but he paid attention as he believed she wouldn't be spouting these kinds of things for nothing. The problem is, by doing that, we're also exposing ourselves to all the malice and all the things that corrupt a person. If we're not prepared, if we're not careful enough, using that power can make us lose our sanity. Koneko glanced up at him. He quickly noted her pupils had thinned, no longer round and more slit-like, much like those of a real cat. Too heard the voices outside, senpai-like whispers in the back of my head. It's like I felt like they were trying to choke me. Issei sighed bitterly in sympathy. You're alright now, Koneko-chan. Koneko pursed her lips. It's what drove my sister to WL. I'm scared that if I go outside, I will be like my sister. I don't want to hurt anyone that I care about. Issei nodded solemnly. I see. Damn, that's heavy. You carry some heavy weights for someone your size, Koneko-chan. Don't forget to leave some for the rest of us. She giggled quietly, slightly embarrassed. They want to help you just as much as you want to help them as well, you know. It's okay to let those that are close to you help you. She blinked. Once, twice, ruminating his words, reconsidering hers. You're right. She smiled. Thank you, senpai. But I literally did nothing, was a sentence that popped in his mind, but he settled against saying it so as to not ruin this moment. I don't know what's happening out there, but I can tell it's not good for us. My family is out there. I have to go help them. WL, don't let me stop you. It's your choice, Koneko-chan. You've been around these people more than I do. Thanks for not treating me like I'm just a kid, she muttered with a tiny smile, with a childlike genuinity. The chaotic chorus of desperate whispers echoing in her head had not yet dissipated. Despair and insanity clawed at her mind as the voices commanded her to do things she knew were wrong. But now she had the courage to fight the voices inside her head. Stay here, senpai. You have to, she said again, making sure. Once she received a reluctant nod, Koneko quickly darted outside the room, and Issei could have sworn he saw white flames starting to flicker around her, orbiting her. At that moment, all he could think about was how useless and powerless he felt. Was this the extent of what he could do? Cheered a distressed girl, and now nothing else other than to sit down, twiddling his thumbs while there are people out there fighting to the death because his eyes could disintegrate matters without scientific explanation. No, it was during times like these that his father's words echoed in his mind, like a distant toll of a bell signifying a great change in his character. Don't hide them under the bed. That's old tactic. You have technology our mother isn't so familiar about. Store them in your hard drive. No, not that. If there comes a time where you don't know what to do, where to go, that you feel so lost, remember this, son. Listen to your heart, think it through with a cool head, then you take action. He knew he wanted to be present, and be remembered as a person who was there, instead of a person that could have been there. Logically, he should stay here to not cause trouble for the devils, but on the other hand, they were risking their lives to keep him safe. Could he face them tomorrow if he did nothing to help when he could have done something? Issei waited several minutes, making sure Koneko was well out of an earshot before he too got off his ass and headed towards the door, only to realize there was some sort of magic locking it, because the handle wouldn't move. Allah damn it, he grumbled for a moment, his shoulders slumping. Then he recalled his ocular powers and the entire door disintegrated before him. Right, he muttered at the now non-existent door before him. I can do that. And then his malformed wings sprouted, and this too. Issei ran like a pit bull that escaped a dog pound chasing down a kid down the hallway of the old school building, unaware that everything seemed 3 shades brighter than they should as all the lights were out. It took him one burst of his wings to get from one end of a corridor to the other. As he drew nearer, he caught the sounds of what sounded similar to the clashing of swords, and felt a strange sensation, one that he'd soon learn as his growing innate ability to sense magic, and leapt out the window without any hesitation, or thinking, whoa, aie. He shot himself up, shooting skyward like a dark comet, screaming as he did. If stopping the fight was his goal, then he had succeeded, as his blast-off had momentarily put the entire fight on hold as everyone, including the rampaging fallen angels, gazed upwards. Huh! Is that Hayadu? And indeed it was him, gracelessly catapulting into the school's roof, slamming and tumbling as he yelped and screamed once he fell off the edge, onto the cold hard ground. Hayada! Rias gasped, snapping out from the sudden distraction faster than Rias could. Rainier dug her heels into Rias' stomach, sending the devil straight to the ground with an empowered kick. And of course the idiot had to off himself after all this shit, she snarled, displeased as she could feel her fervor and adrenaline slowly ebb away. She blitzed down, landing before Rias, who was still lying on the small crater of packed dirt of the track field. Killing you is an actual punishable crime now, Rainier whispered, which I do mind carrying. Rias smiled, even as her blood trickled down the side of her face, flowing down past her crimson brows and thick lashes, past her perfect nose and lips. Even in the end, you cannot win, ARGH. Shut up, slut, Rainier spat, ripping out the light spear piercing Rias' shoulder. Killing you might be out of the question, but there's nothing stating I can't break you. Rias clutched her bleeding shoulder, gritting her teeth as cold sweat began to pour. Do you have any idea what you're doing? Are you even aware of the consequences? You're starting a war over a boy. No. You're the one that caused it. We wouldn't have to go through all this if you had just handed him over. What is he even to you? You've only known him for a week at most. You wouldn't get it. Don't act like you know me. Rainier glowered, and she wordlessly skewered Rias' hand that was covering her shoulder, as the devil screamed. She dreamt of this day, torturing this devil with impunity, yet oddly enough, this was nowhere as satisfying as she thought. Not like she'd stop though. Momentarily, she scanned around the field to check up on her lackeys and how they were doing. Impressively, that blonde knight was still holding his ground even against 3 fallens, and Rainier was both impressed and annoyed. She became even more annoyed as she was blasted by a white orb that struck her side like a meteorite, sending her away. Senpai! Koneko ran up to her wounded master and promptly yanked out the light spear impaling her hand and shoulder. At that point, Rias was simply too exhausted to even scream. Koneko, still, Rias managed to smile despite her battered strength, and she managed to take note of the white furred ears and sleek tail of her rook. Your ears? There? Are you okay, senpai? Koneko asked worriedly, standing before Rias, her feline eyes watching for Rainier as she seemed to have relit the fallen angel's wrath. The floating white flame-like orbs dancing around Koneko gently shrouded Rias open-wound with its warm light. While healing torn flesh and muscles were beyond her capability, Koneko could at least lessen the pain. I'll manage, thanks, Rias breathed, slowly getting up. Her body felt sore and covered in dust, her clothes ripped here and there, and Rias had never yearned for a nice long hot bath this badly. Be careful, Koneko. We're still in combat. Where's Hayadu? Was that really him earlier? It was. He's alive, I can feel it. Just not moving. I'm sorry, I wanted to be of help, but I didn't think he'd get out so soon. I sealed the door. His eyes then such an intriguing anomaly. That said, we can't win here, Koneko. Rainier's too agile for me to hit, but you should fare better against her. I need you to distract her while I aid Akino and Yuto. Koneko nodded. Where will we go? Hell, Rias said, groaning as she got herself up. I just need a minute to conjure a magic circle, and we're getting out of here. What about Roigun-sensei? She can handle her own. I'll leave her to you. Be careful, Koneko. None of us are dying tonight. Rias ended, forcing herself to rush over towards Akino's unmoving body.